Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today we have Jared Hutter on the show, and he's Chief Snow Shoveler over at Aptitude Development, and this episode is part of our iConnections series where we bring you the best of those that attended and participated in iConnections in Miami. Jared, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Adam.
All right, so first things first here, I want to get into Aptitude Development, of course, and I got to know where that Chief Snow Shoveler comes from, that title. I love it. But before we get into all of that, I want to talk a little bit about iConnections and your experience in Miami. Have you been part of the organization? Have you attended in the past? Is this your first time? Give us some of the backstory.
Sure. So this was my first trip to Miami for the conference, but I went to Singapore last year in, November of 2025. And a really great experience, right? I think it's what they do. I think what Ron has put together, it was a really fascinating platform for bringing capital together along with those who want to allocate it. So it's been a really good experience so far. I think the platform that they have online is phenomenal and got me to go to Singapore, right? So that in of itself was certainly a lot of fun. I got to go to Asia, meet a whole bunch of interesting family offices. I think those relationships are obviously going to take a long time to curate, but I had to kind of start that at some point. And then Miami was a whole other experience, right? Miami had some incredible speakers that were going through. I think the chance to meet a lot of really interesting people, was something I really took to heart and was excited to do. And hopefully I get a chance to go back again.
What keeps you coming back? I mean, obviously you've been in this business for a while and a lot of different ways you could spend your time. I'm always curious when something sticks. Obviously you went to Singapore the first time, then Miami. What keeps you coming back? What makes this different or unique or special?
Look, I think it's two things. I think it's an expensive ticket, right? But I think that also weeds out a lot of people by having you go there knowing the meetings you're going to have, right? It's not so many conferences you go and all right, what am I going to have outside of this? I'm going to hang out at the bar. I'm going to try and go to some dinners and meet people. I think the way that iConnections has set up their platform is really, really phenomenal because ahead of time, you get matched with people, for a couple of weeks ahead of time. You get to reach out. You get to understand what their investment profiles are. What it really does is it's a great use of time because going into these meetings, what they're looking for, they know what you're pitching. And look, certainly you can talk about a lot of different things and sometimes meetings get set up and it's not always going to be a fit. But I think that the conversations that you end up having, given the way the platform is set up, is very beneficial and becomes a pretty good use of time. Now, look, that being said, I hope something sticks with one of these people. Without that, I don't know if it makes sense to continue to spend the dollars because it is an expensive ticket. But if I get one investor, I would come back again.
Yeah, game on. Aptitude Development. First off, Chief Snow Shoveler. Talk about the business. Tell me a little bit more about the company.
Sure. So we are a vertically integrated student housing development firm. We're based in northern New Jersey. We build across the country. So we are effectively a national real estate developer. Our focus is on student housing, and we build ground-up projects. Our typical projects range anywhere from 400 to 700 beds. We've done a little bit smaller. We've done a little bit bigger. But I think our sweet spot right now moving forward is really in that 400 to 700 bed range. Focus moving forward is really on the large state public schools. I think, and we're not alone in that. I think the vast majority of the student housing development world, that's where everyone wants to be. Reason being, that's where the outsized growth should be, right? People talk a lot about, the value of education and the delivery of education changing. My big thing is that you can't replicate the college experience from your parents' basement. So I don't think that the college experience is going to go away. Is it going to change a little bit? Yeah, everything changes, right? Time changes everything. I think AI is going to change a lot of this. Technology is going to change all of this in terms of how education is ultimately delivered. And the experience is going to change a little bit. But the experience itself is never going to go away, in my opinion. I think that transition time, when you go away when you're 18, you have 4 or 5, hopefully 6 years away to kind of before you jump into the workforce. And that time period, I think, is really valuable in people's lives. So that's kind of where we're solving for right now is that time period. And when you think about where people are going to spend that time, you start having to think about the value proposition of education, right? So when you get into that and you really get into that, certainly, I think that moving forward, a lot of that's going to be at the large state schools because they're not as expensive as some other ones. Does that mean the large private schools, or the $80,000-$100,000 a year schools are going to go away? I'm not going to short them, but it's not necessarily where I want to bet. I like the bet right now on the value proposition schools.
How did you get involved in the student housing space? Like, why was that so attractive to you?
Yeah, so I didn't come from a real estate background. I didn't know too much about real estate, but I started to get interested in it in college. And one of the things I always really liked was the idea of building something from nothing, right? I really liked the idea of constructing new buildings. And I saw student housing as really like an avenue that I could get into and got excited about. When I was in college, purpose-built student housing didn't really exist. I was at Syracuse. But I started to see at some other universities where I had friends, these types of buildings coming up. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So I started to understand it, started to look into it. And as I got more interested in real estate, it was really just aggressively looking into this sector. And I was working for some other people for a handful of years, but I was always watching the student housing world on the side. I was reading the quarterly reports. At the time, there was 2 publicly traded companies. I was always reading their reports. I was always trying to educate myself on the metrics and what people were looking for and where the industry was headed, because I saw it as something that was exciting, not overly crowded, and a place where if I wanted to go build a development firm, I could really get in there and do that, right? There's a million guys who want to go develop in New York City. Yeah, there's a million guys who can do that here. You want to go develop in New Jersey? Yeah, I mean, there's people who have been doing that for 50, 60 years who have better access to capital, better access to deals than I do. And I didn't want to compete with that. I wanted to get in somewhere and do something. I always say, like, I want to go do deals. I don't want to just chase deals. I actually want to go do deals. So if I want to do deals, you got to figure out where you can go do them. And that was how I came about with student housing.
Talk to me about the capital raising side of this and the landscape in that niche and what you're seeing. What do you think?
Yes. So historically, we've been a real syndicator of high net worth family office dollars. So in the last 12 years, we've done about 13 deals, ground up development, built about 5,000 beds, about $750 million of total capital deployed, and about $1 billion of development value. But in that, I would tell you that we've raised about $325 million of equity in that time frame to do those deals. And I've really syndicated that out. I've taken everything from a $25,000 check to a single check of $14 million. So we've done a little bit of everything over that time. And it's been an interesting ride, right? So syndicating it out with the retail network, I have about 650 unique investors. Through that network has been a really interesting and good experience, I'd say. It's given me the opportunity to learn from a lot of people, make a tremendous amount of connections. And when the institutions were clamming up a little bit over the last couple of years, the retail capital was the last ones to leave the party. The flip side to that is they're the last ones to come back to the party as well. So I think that side of the business has slowed down a little bit, along with the fact that we're getting bigger, right? We have more deals. We've really built a great organization. I've got a phenomenal team around me at our company, and we're finding more deals. Deals are getting bigger. So if we wanted to just do one deal at a time, I would say we probably continue doing it the way we are. We continue to syndicate it out. But I'm really now looking for much larger investors and some programmatic partners potentially to come in. And what I'd really like in a perfect world, I'd love a great family office, who loves the sector and wants to come kind of solve for some higher level returns. I don't mind playing with co-GP with somebody, right? I think what I've come to really understand over the last couple of years is co-GP can mean a million different things, right? And while I think we have good subject matter expertise right now, I think when people are talking co-GP, which is the hot buzzwords these days, they're just trying to solve for a higher return, right? And that I'm okay with. If people want to make more money, I'm happy to work harder for them to do that. I'm not looking for partners to come in and kind of run our business for us. I think that would not be the partners that we're looking for, but we're definitely looking for the right capital partners who can help us grow and that we can make good money for.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great story. I love it. And what I also like too is, and what's interesting to me is as this space evolves and as education as a whole evolves, and you mentioned it pretty optimistically, which is like the college experience isn't going away. Like I agree with you. Like I'm like, there's still going to be some form or some variation of the college experience. What it looks like, campuses, all of that will change, right? But as a whole, I agree. I completely agree with what you're talking about. So I'm interested to see as the campuses change, as the infrastructure changes, all this, like how your space is affected, because ultimately, like that's going to change too. Like I remember going to a college campus. I went to my alma mater once upon a time a while ago, and I was like, what happened here? Like the housing, the apartments, like the new builds, all that. I'm like, it's amazing. I wanted to go back, man.
I would tell you,
different. Go ahead.
Obviously, I agree with everything you just said, but I would tell you, you know what the exciting part to me is I think our industry of student housing is going to get to help shape what some of that looks like. Not necessarily because we want to, but I think exactly, right? Like it's just a natural thing as our industry continues to look at the amenities that are out there that kids are wanting, right? Like
with competition, like are they going to be on campus, off campus? Like you have to have the amenities. That's why I said I wanted to go back. I was like, man, some of these amenities. I live in a luxury high rise, and I'm like, this student housing. Go ahead.
I'll give you a crazy thought that somebody else. Yeah. I can't take credit for this. I was sitting on a panel last year, and a designer who I know made this comment. It kind of blew my mind. But he was right, and I really have been thinking about this the entire year. He's like, we're designing buildings for kids who are 14 years old today. It's like, holy crap.
Wow.
Right? Like, put that in perspective, right? Yeah. That's what this business is. And by the way, that's what this business has been for a long time. Yeah. I never thought about that until a year ago. This designer made that comment. So when you layer that into the thinking, right? So now you got to figure out what these kids are going to want. They're 14 years old today, right? Like how much is technology shifting? What kind of amenities do they want? So I think our industry of student housing is kind of on the forefront of a lot of this. And I think you're going to see multifamily take a lot of cues from what we're doing. I think you're going to see the universities start to really look at what we're doing, how much we're going to influence a university's decision. We shouldn't, right? I think the universities should take a much broader view and should really be thinking. But I do believe the smartest and best universities out there, from the experience perspective, are going to really take a hard look at what the student housing guys are doing and understand the trends, because we're really on the forefront of all this. And that aspect right there, to me, is one of the most exciting parts of this business.
Yeah, that is exciting. I never thought about that. Blew my mind too, what you just said. So you're designing for 14-year-olds. That's amazing.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Jared, this has been a lot of fun having you on and getting a feel for what's going on in the industry and also your business. That being said, you mentioned looking for investors, family offices, looking for, to partnerships potentially. How do people follow up? How do they connect? How do they learn about Aptitude Development?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our website, aptitudere.com, you can always find us there. But I would tell you that really the only social media I'm active on these days is LinkedIn. Trying to be pretty active on there, putting out a lot of good thoughts. So anyone who wants to find us, we'd love to have a discussion. That's really the best place to connect with me.
Fantastic. And for everybody listening, just so you know, we'll definitely put some links in the show notes so you can just click on the links and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way on your journey as well. So hit that subscribe or follow button. And Jared, man, it's been a pleasure. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. We'll talk soon. Be well.